My name is Jake Morrison, and I've been riding the range in West Texas for the better part of 30 years. At 45, I thought I'd seen everything the frontier had to offer: cattle rustlers, Indian raids, droughts that could break a man's spirit, and floods that could wash away a lifetime of work. But nothing in my experience had prepared me for what I found on that scorching July morning in 1885. I was riding fence line on the eastern border of my ranch, checking for breaks in the wire and looking for strays, when I spotted something unusual in the distance. At first I thought it might be a wounded animal, something white moving erratically through the mesquite and sagebrush. But as I rode closer, I realized it was a person, and that person was in trouble. It was a young girl, couldn't have been more than 15 or 16, wearing what had once been a beautiful white dress. The dress was now torn and dirty, the elaborate lace hem shredded from running through thorny brush. Her dark hair, which had obviously been carefully arranged earlier, now hung in tangled strands around her face. She was stumbling more than walking, clearly exhausted and dehydrated under the brutal Texas sun. When she saw me approaching, she tried to run, but her legs gave out and she collapsed to her knees in the red dirt. "Easy there, miss," I called out, dismounting slowly so as not to frighten her further. "I'm not going to hurt you." She looked up at me with the biggest, most terrified brown eyes I'd ever seen. Her face was streaked with tears and dust, and I could see that her feet were bleeding through what remained of delicate white slippers that were never meant for walking across rough country. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse from thirst and crying. "Please don't take me back. I can't. I won't go back." "Back where, child?" I asked gently, kneeling down beside her. "What are you running from?" "My wedding," she said, and then burst into fresh tears. I looked at her more carefully. The white dress, despite its current condition, was clearly expensive silk and laced with tiny pearl buttons. This wasn't the dress of a poor farmer's daughter. This was the wedding gown of someone from a wealthy family. "How old are you, miss?" 15, she said, confirming my worst suspicions. "And who were you supposed to marry?" "Mr. Garrett. Samuel Garrett. He's 43 years old and he's horrible. He drinks too much and he hits his workers," and she shuddered. "My father says I have to marry him because our family owes him money, but I can't. I just can't." I'd heard of Samuel Garrett. He owned a large spread about 50 miles east of my ranch, and his reputation was as bad as the girl suggested. He was known for his cruelty to both animals and people, and there were rumors about what had happened to his first wife, who had died under mysterious circumstances just 2 years after their marriage. "What's your name, child?" Maria Esperanza Delacroix." I recognized the name. The Delacroix family had once been one of the wealthiest in the region, with vast holdings in cattle and land, but I'd heard rumors that they'd fallen on hard times, making bad investments and losing money in failed business ventures. "Well, Miss Maria, you can't stay out here in this heat. You'll die of thirst before nightfall. Why don't you come back to my ranch with me? We can get you some water and food and figure out what to do next. You won't make me go back. I won't make you do anything you don't want to do, I promised. But we need to get you out of this, son." I helped her onto my horse, and we rode slowly back to my ranch house. It wasn't much to look at: a simple adobe structure with a few outbuildings and a small corral, but it was home, and it was safe. My housekeeper Alina was shocked when I arrived with a bedraggled girl in a wedding dress. "Dios mío!" she exclaimed in Spanish. "What happened to this poor child?" "She's running from a forced marriage," I explained. "Can you help her get cleaned up and find her something more practical to wear?" Alina, who was in her 60s and had raised 7 children of her own, immediately took charge. "Of course, Senor Jake can come. Mika, let's get you out of those clothes and into a bath." While Alina tended to Maria, I sat on my front porch and tried to figure out what I had gotten myself into. Harboring a runaway bride was serious business, especially when that bride came from a prominent family and was supposed to marry a man with Samuel Garrett's influence and connections. But I couldn't get the image of those terrified eyes out of my mind. No child, and that's what she was. Despite the wedding dress, should be forced into marriage with a man like Garrett. An hour later, Alina brought Maria back to the porch. She was wearing one of Elena's old dresses, which was too big for her small frame but infinitely more practical than the ruined wedding gown. Her hair was clean and braided, and some color had returned to her cheeks. "Thank you," Maria said softly, sitting in the chair Alina had brought for her. "Both of you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't found me. You would have died out there," I said bluntly. "This isn't country for walking, especially not in fancy shoes and a dress like that. How far did you come?" "I don't know exactly. I ran from the church in San Antonio early this morning. I've been walking ever since." San Antonio was at least 30 miles away. The fact that she'd made it this far on foot, in that heat, wearing those shoes, was remarkable. "Maria, I need to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth. Did your parents know you were planning to run?" She shook her head. "No. They would have locked me in my room if they'd suspected. They've been planning this marriage for months, ever since Papa lost so much money in that railroad investment that failed. So they think you've been kidnapped or worse, probably." But I left a note explaining that I couldn't go through with the wedding. I told them I was sorry, but I couldn't marry Mr. Garrett. "And what did you plan to do? Where were you going to go?" For the first time since I'd found her, Maria looked uncertain. I hadn't really thought that far ahead. I just knew I had to get away. That evening, as we sat around Elena's kitchen table eating a simple dinner of beans and cornbread, Maria told us more about her situation. Her father, once a successful rancher and businessman, had made a series of poor investments that had left the family deeply in debt. Samuel Garrett had offered to forgive the debt in exchange for Maria's hand in marriage. "Papa says it's the only way to save our family's honor," Maria explained, "but I've seen how Mr. Garrett treats people. His ranch hands are afraid of him, and there are stories about his first wife." "What kind of stories?" I asked. "She used to have bruises. People noticed, and when she died, it was very sudden. The doctor said it was her heart, but she was only 24 years old and had always been healthy." Elena crossed herself. "That poor woman. I know Papa thinks he's doing what's best for the family," Maria continued, "but I can't sacrifice my life to pay his debts. Is that selfish of me?" "No, child," I said firmly. "It's not selfish to want to live your own life, and it's not selfish to refuse to marry a man who might hurt you. But what can I do? I have no money, no skills, nowhere to go. If I don't marry Mr. Garrett, my family will lose everything. There are other ways to solve problems besides selling your daughter to a brute," I said. "Your father should be looking for those solutions instead of taking the easy way out." That night, I lay awake thinking about Maria's situation. I knew that by morning, there would likely be search parties looking for her. Her family would be frantic, and Samuel Garrett would be furious about his missing bride. It wouldn't take long for someone to think of checking the surrounding ranches, but I also knew that I couldn't simply turn her over to people who would force her into a marriage that could very well end in her death. The next morning, my decision was made for me. I was feeding the horses when I saw a cloud of dust on the horizon, riders, and lots of them, heading straight for my ranch. I ran back to the house. "Maria, Elena, we have company coming." "Maria, you need to hide." "Where?" Maria asked, her face pale with fear. "The root cellar behind the house. Elena will show you. Stay there until I come get you, no matter what you hear." Elena quickly led Maria to the hidden cellar where we stored vegetables and preserves during the winter months. It was small and dark, but it was concealed and would keep her safe. I was standing on my front porch when the riders arrived. There were 8 of them, led by a man I recognized as Sheriff Tom Bradley from San Antonio. Behind him rode a distinguished-looking older man who could only be Maria's father. And bringing up the rear was Samuel Garrett himself. Garrett was exactly what I'd expected, a big, heavy-set man with cold eyes and a cruel mouth. Even from a distance, I could see the anger radiating from him. "Jake Morrison," the sheriff called as they rode up. "That's me, Sheriff. What can I do for you?" "We're looking for a missing girl, Maria Delacroix. She disappeared yesterday morning, and we have reason to believe she might have come this way." "What makes you think that?" The older man, who I assumed was Maria's father, spoke up. "She was seen heading east from San Antonio. Your ranch is the first settlement in this direction. I haven't seen any young ladies, missing or otherwise." I lied smoothly. "What happened to her?" "She ran away from her wedding," Garrett said, his voice harsh with anger. "The ungrateful little brat disappeared just before the ceremony was supposed to start her wedding," I asked, feigning surprise. "How old is this girl?" 15, her father said quietly, and I could hear the shame in his voice. 15, I repeated, making sure my disapproval was clear. "And you were going to marry her off too?" "Who to me?" Garrett said, puffing up with self-importance. "It was a business arrangement between her father and myself. The girl has certain obligations to her family." "I see. Well, like I said, I haven't seen her. But if a 15-year-old girl had shown up at my ranch, I'm not sure I'd be in any hurry to hand her over to a man old enough to be her father." Garrett's face darkened. "That girl belongs to me. Her father owes me money, and she's payment on that debt. People aren't property, Garrett, not even 15-year-old girls. You'd better watch your mouth, Morrison. I have influential friends, and I don't take kindly to interference in my business. And I don't take kindly to grown men who think they can buy children," I replied evenly. The sheriff stepped in before the confrontation could escalate further. "Jake, I need to search your property. It's nothing personal, but we have to be thorough." "Of course, Sheriff. Search wherever you like." They spent an hour going through my house, the barn, the bunkhouse, and every other building on the property. They never thought to look for a hidden root cellar, and I made sure to keep them away from that area by staying close and engaging them in conversation. When they were finished, Garrett was furious. "She's here somewhere, I can feel it." "Well, your feelings aren't evidence," the sheriff said. "We've searched everywhere, and there's no sign of her." "This isn't over, Morrison," Garrett threatened as they prepared to leave. "If I find out you're hiding her, you'll what?" I asked calmly. "Threaten me some more." "I'm not impressed by bullies, Garrett, no matter how much money they have." After they rode away, I waited a full hour before retrieving Maria from the root cellar. She was shaking when I helped her out, and I could see that she'd been crying. "You hear all that?" I asked. She nodded. Mr. Garrett sounded so angry, and Papa didn't even defend me. He just stood there while that man called me property. "I'm sorry, Maria. I know this is hard. What happens now?" "They'll keep looking for me, won't they?" Probably. But we'll figure something out. In the meantime, you're safe here. Why are you helping me? You don't even know me. I thought about that question for a moment, because it's the right thing to do. Because no child should be forced into marriage with a man like Garrett. And because ... I paused, remembering my own sister who had died young in an abusive marriage that my parents had arranged, because someone should have helped my sister when she needed it, and no one did. That evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Maria asked me about my sister. Her name was Catherine. I told her. She was just 16 when my parents married her off to a man who seemed respectable, but turned out to be a monster. She died 3 years later, and I've always blamed myself for not doing more to help her. It wasn't your fault, Maria said softly. Maybe not, but I can help you, and I'm going to, even if it means trouble for you, especially if it means trouble for me. Some things are worth fighting for, Maria. Your freedom is one of them. As the stars came out over the Texas sky, I made a silent promise to my sister's memory and to the brave young girl sitting beside me. Whatever it took, however long it took, I would make sure that Maria Delacroix never had to marry Samuel Garrett. The fight for her freedom was just beginning, but I was ready for whatever came next. The weeks that followed were tense, but transformative. Maria threw herself into ranch life with a determination that surprised me. Despite her privileged upbringing, she proved to be a quick learner and hard worker. Alina taught her to cook, clean, and manage a household, while I showed her how to care for horses, mend fences, and handle the countless tasks that kept a ranch running. I never knew how much work it took to run a place like this, Maria said. One morning, as we repaired a section of fence that had been damaged by a recent storm, at home, we had servants for everything. There's satisfaction in doing things with your own hands, I replied, watching as she carefully twisted wire around a fence post. Makes you appreciate what you have. I'm starting to understand that. I feel ... useful here. Like I matter for more than just what family I was born into or how much money I might bring to a marriage. It had been 3 weeks since the search party had visited my ranch, and there had been no sign of further pursuit. I was beginning to hope that maybe Garrett and the Delacroix family had given up their search. But I knew better than to let my guard down completely. Maria was changing before my eyes. The frightened, desperate girl I'd found in the desert was becoming a confident young woman. She still had moments of sadness and worry. I often caught her staring off into the distance with a troubled expression, but overall, she seemed to be thriving in her new environment. Jake, she said one evening, as we sat on the porch after dinner, I've been thinking about my future. I can't hide here forever, can I? You're not hiding, Maria. You're living. There's a difference. But realistically, what are my options? I can't go home. Papa will just try to marry me off to Mr. Garrett again. I have no money, no family who would take me in. What kind of life can I build for myself? It was a question I'd been wrestling with myself. A 15-year-old girl in 1885 had limited options, especially one from a wealthy family who had run away from an arranged marriage. There are possibilities, I said carefully. You could become a teacher. You're certainly smart enough, and you've had a good education. Or you could work as a governess for a family that needs someone to educate their children. Would anyone hire me without references? Without knowing my background? We could work something out. Give you a new identity, a new history. It's been done before. You mean lie about who I am? I mean give you a chance to become who you want to be, instead of who other people expect you to be. Maria was quiet for a long moment, considering this. What about you, Jake? What do you want? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, what do you want from life? You're 45 years old? You've never married. You live alone on this ranch with just Alina for company. Don't you ever want more? I'd been married once. Briefly. When I was in my 20s. My wife had died in childbirth, along with our son, and I'd never felt inclined to try again. The pain of that loss had been too great, and I'd convinced myself that I was better off alone. I have everything I need, I said. But even as I spoke the words, I realized they weren't entirely true anymore. Do you? Because it seems to me like you're hiding too, in your own way. Before I could respond to that uncomfortable observation, we were interrupted by the sound of approaching horses. My hand instinctively moved to the rifle I kept beside my chair, and Maria tensed beside me. But this time, it was just one rider, and as he came closer, I recognized him as Dr. William Hayes from San Antonio. Dr. Hayes had been a friend of mine for years, and his presence here could only mean one thing: someone was sick or injured. Doc, I called as he dismounted. What brings you out this way, Jake? I need to talk to you. It's about the Delacroix girl. Maria started to rise, probably to go hide, but I put a gentle hand on her arm. It's all right, I told her. Doc Hayes is a good man. The doctor looked at Maria with kind eyes. You must be Maria. I've been looking for you, child, but not for the reasons you might think. What do you mean? Maria asked warily. I mean I've been hoping to find you before Samuel Garrett does. I have some information you need to hear. We invited Dr. Hayes to sit down, and Alina brought him coffee and food. He looked tired, like he'd been riding hard for a long time. Maria, he began, I need to tell you about Samuel Garrett's first wife, Isabella. Maria's face went pale. What about her? I was the doctor who attended her when she died. The official cause of death was listed as heart failure, but he paused, clearly struggling with what he was about to say. I've carried this secret for 2 years, and I can't carry it anymore. Isabella didn't die of heart failure. She died from injuries consistent with a severe beating. You mean he killed her? Maria whispered. I can't prove it legally, but yes, I believe Samuel Garrett murdered his wife. And I believe he would do the same to you if you were forced to marry him. Why didn't you report this to the authorities? I asked. Because Garrett has too much influence, too much money. The sheriff is in his pocket, and the judge owes him favors. My word alone wouldn't be enough to convict him, and speaking out would only put my own family in danger. But you're speaking out now, Maria observed, because I can't stand by and watch another young woman die. Isabella was only Maria, she had her whole life ahead of her. What can we do? I asked. I've been making some inquiries, very discreetly. There's a family in California, the Hendersons, who are looking for a governess for their 3 daughters. They're good people, and they're far enough away that Garrett would never find Maria. They're California, Maria said. That's so far away. Far away is exactly what you need, Dr. Hayes replied. I can provide you with references under a different name, and I have contacts who can help you get there safely. What about my family, my parents? Dr. Hayes' expression grew sad. Maria, I have to tell you something else. Your father, he's not well. The stress of the failed investments, the debt, and now your disappearance has taken a toll on his health. He's had what appears to be a stroke. Maria gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Is he? He's alive, but he's partially paralyzed and can't speak clearly. Your mother is caring for him, but the doctors don't expect him to recover fully. Tears began streaming down Maria's face. I have to go to him. Maria, no, I said firmly. If you go back now, Garrett will force you into that marriage immediately. Your father wouldn't want that for you, but he's my father. He's dying, and it's my fault. It's not your fault, Dr. Hayes said gently. Your father's illness is the result of years of stress and poor health choices. You running away may have been the final straw, but you're not responsible for his condition. How can you be sure? Because I've been his doctor for 10 years, and I've been warning him about his health for most of that time. The stroke was inevitable, Maria, have happened whether you married Garrett or not. We sat in silence for a while, absorbing this news. Finally, Maria spoke. Tell me more about this family in California. Dr. Hayes pulled out a letter from his coat pocket. The Hendersons own a large ranch near Sacramento. They have 3 daughters, ages 8, 10, and 12, who need education and guidance. They're offering good wages, room and board, and most importantly, they're the kind of people who would protect you if anyone came looking. How do you know them? Mrs. Henderson is my sister. I've written to her about your situation, and she's agreed to help. She understands what you're running from. What would my new identity be? Mary Esperanza Hayes? You would be my niece, recently orphaned, with teaching experience from a private school back east. Maria looked at me. What do you think, Jake? I thought about it carefully. The plan had merit. It would get Maria far away from Garrett and give her a chance to build a new life. But the selfish part of me didn't want her to go. Over the past few weeks, she had become like the daughter I'd never had, and the thought of losing her was painful. But I knew that my feelings couldn't be the deciding factor. Maria's safety and future had to come first. I think it's a good opportunity, I said finally. It would give you independence, a respectable position, and most importantly, safety. When would I have to leave? As soon as possible, Dr. Hayes replied. I have a wagon train contact who can get you to California safely, but they're leaving next week. If you miss this opportunity, it might be months before another one comes along. Next week. Maria looked stricken. That's so soon. I know it's fast. But Maria, you have to understand. Garrett hasn't given up looking for you. He's been putting pressure on your family, threatening to foreclose on their debts immediately if you don't return. And there are rumors that he's hired men to search for you more, aggressively. What kind of men? I asked, not liking the sound of that. The kind who don't ask questions and don't care about the law. If they find you, they'll take you back to Garrett by force. And there won't be anything anyone can do to stop them. That settled it for me. Maria, you have to go. It's not safe for you here anymore. But what about you? What if they come here looking for me after I'm gone? I can take care of myself. And once you're safely in California, there won't be any evidence that you were ever here, except Alina and me. We know the truth, and we'll take that truth to our graves if necessary, I said firmly. Maria was quiet for a long time, staring out at the darkening sky. Finally, she turned back to us. All right, I'll go to California, but I want to write a letter to my parents. First, I want them to know that I'm safe and that I'm sorry for the pain I've caused them. Maria, Dr. Hayes said gently, I don't think that's wise. Any contact with your family could be traced back to you. Then I'll write it, but I won't send it. I just need to put my feelings into words, even if they never read them. That's a good idea, I agreed. Sometimes writing things down helps us process our emotions. That night, Maria spent hours writing her letter by lamplight. I could hear her crying softly as she wrote, and it took all my self-control not to go to her and offer comfort. She needed to work through her feelings on her own. The next morning, she seemed more at peace with her decision. I'm scared, she admitted as we worked together in the garden, but I'm also excited. For the first time in my life, I get to choose my own path. That's exactly how you should feel. Scared but excited. That's how you know you're doing something important. Jake, I want you to know that these weeks here with you and Alina have been the happiest of my life. You've shown me what it means to be treated with respect and kindness, and I'll never forget that. You've given me something too, Maria. You've reminded me that there's more to life than just existing day to day. You've brought joy back into this old house. Will you visit me in California? If you want me to, and if it's safe to do so, then yes, I'll visit. I'd like that very much. As the week progressed, we made preparations for Maria's departure. Alina helped her pack a small bag with practical clothes and personal items. I gave her money for the journey and for emergencies once she reached California. Dr. Hayes arranged for her transportation and provided her with all the documentation she would need for her new identity. On her last night at the ranch, we sat on the porch together one final time. I'm going to miss this, Maria said, looking out at the vast Texas landscape. I never thought I'd say that about ranch life, but there's something peaceful about it. You'll always have a home here, Maria. No matter what happens, no matter how far you go, you'll always be welcome here. Thank you, Jake, for everything. You saved my life in more ways than one. You saved mine too, child. You reminded me what it means to care about someone again. The next morning, Dr. Hayes arrived with a wagon to take Maria to meet the California-bound train. As she climbed up onto the seat beside him, I felt a pain in my chest that I hadn't experienced since my wife died. Take care of yourself, Mary Hayes, I said, using her new name. Take care of yourself too, Jake Morrison. And don't wait too long to find your own happiness. As I watched the wagon disappear into the distance, Alina came to stand beside me. She will be all right, Senator Jake. She is strong now, stronger than when she came here. I know, but I'm going to miss her. Sir, we both will. But sometimes, letting someone go is the greatest act of love we can perform. I knew Alina was right, but that didn't make it any easier. Maria had brought light into my life, and now that light was moving on to shine somewhere else. But I was proud of her courage and her determination to build a new life on her own terms. The frightened girl who had run from her wedding had become a strong young woman, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And somewhere in California, the Henderson family was about to discover what a treasure they were receiving in there. New governess. 3 months passed without any word from Maria, and I found myself checking the mail with an anxiety I hadn't felt in years. Dr. Hayes had warned me that communication would be difficult and infrequent. Too much contact could potentially expose her location, but the silence was harder to bear than I had anticipated. Life on the ranch continued its familiar rhythm, but something fundamental had changed. The house felt empty in a way it never had before, even during my years of solitude. Alina noticed it too, often catching me staring off toward the horizon where Maria's wagon had disappeared. She is safe, Senator Jake, Alina would say whenever she caught me in these moments of melancholy. I can feel it in my heart. I hoped Elena's intuition was correct, but I couldn't shake my worry. The world was a dangerous place for a young woman, traveling alone, even with the protection of a wagon train and a new identity. It was late October when Dr. Hayes finally arrived with news. I saw him coming from a mile away and rode out to meet him, unable to wait for him to reach the house. She's safe, he called out before I could even ask. I received a letter from my sister yesterday. Maria arrived in Sacramento without incident and has settled in well with the Henderson family. The relief that washed over me was so intense I felt dizzy. How is she? Is she happy? According to my sister, she's thriving. The Henderson girls adore her, and she's proven to be an excellent teacher. She's also been helping Mrs. Henderson with the household management and has shown a real aptitude for business. Apparently, she's been helping them reorganize their ranch operations and has suggested several improvements that have already increased their efficiency. My sister says she has a natural head for numbers and planning. I smiled, remembering how quickly Maria had picked up the various aspects of ranch management during her time with me. That doesn't surprise me. She was always asking questions about how things worked. There's more, Dr. Hayes continued. She's been taking correspondence courses to further her education. She wants to eventually become a certified teacher and maybe even open her own school someday. Her own school. She has big dreams, Jake, and for the first time in her life, she's in a position to pursue them. We rode back to the house together, and over dinner, Dr. Hayes shared more details about Maria's new life. She had written a long letter to his sister, describing her journey west and her gratitude for the opportunity to start over. She mentioned you specifically, Dr. Hayes said. She wanted my sister to know that you were the one who saved her life and gave her the courage to believe in herself. I didn't give her courage. That was already inside her. I just gave her a safe place to find it. Don't minimize what you did, Jake. That girl was broken when you found her, and you helped her become whole again. What about her family? Any news from San Antonio? Dr. Hayes' expression grew somber. Her father passed away 2 weeks ago. The stroke damage was too extensive, and his body finally gave out. I felt a pang of sadness for Mariah. despite everything that had happened. I knew she had loved her father and would grieve his loss. Does she know? My sister wrote to tell her. She's taking it hard, as you might expect. There's guilt, there she feels responsible for his decline. That's not fair to herself. Her father's health problems started long before she ran away. I've told her that, and my sister has reinforced the message. But grief isn't always rational. What about her mother? And Samuel Garrett? Mrs. W. is living with relatives now? The family lost everything when they couldn't pay their debts. As for Garrett, Dr. Hayes paused. He's still looking for Maria. He's convinced she's alive somewhere, and he's not giving up. After all this time, he sees it as a matter of pride now. He was publicly humiliated when his bride disappeared, and he wants revenge as much as he wants Maria herself. Has he caused any trouble for you? Or for me? Not directly. But he's been asking questions, offering rewards for information. So far, no one has been able to tell him anything useful, but we need to remain vigilant. That night, I lay awake thinking about Maria and her new life in California. I was happy for her success and proud of her determination to build something meaningful for herself. But I also felt a deep loneliness that I hadn't experienced since the early days after my wife's death. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was working in the barn when Alina came running to find me, her face pale with worry. "Senator Jake, there's a man here to see you. A bad man, I think." I followed her back to the house, where a stranger was waiting on my front porch. He was a thin, wiry man with cold eyes and the kind of face that suggested he was comfortable with violence. "You Jake Morrison?" he asked as I approached. "I am. What can I do for you?" "Name's Carter. I work for Mr. Samuel Garrett. He's still looking for his missing bride, and he's willing to pay good money for information about where she might be. I told the sheriff months ago I haven't seen any missing girls." That was months ago. People's memories sometimes improve. When there's money involved, my memory is just fine, and it hasn't changed. "I don't know anything about Samuel Garrett's missing bride." Carter smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "See? That's interesting, because we've been talking to people, and your name keeps coming up. Seems like you have a reputation for helping people who don't want to be found. I have a reputation for minding my own business and expecting others to do the same. Mr. Garrett is prepared to offer $500 for information leading to the girl's return." "That's a lot of money. For a simple rancher, not interested." "You might want to think about it. Mr. Garrett can be very generous to his friends, but he's not so kind to people who get in his way." "Is that a threat?" "It's friendly advice." "Good day, Mr. Morrison." After Carter rode away, I knew that the situation had escalated. Garrett wasn't just looking for Maria. Anymore, he was actively threatening anyone who might have helped her. I wrote a careful letter to Dr. Hayes, warning him about Carter's visit and suggesting that we needed to be even more cautious about any communication with Maria. The last thing I wanted was for Garrett's men to trace any connection back to California. Winter came early that year, with heavy snows that made travel difficult and provided a natural barrier against unwanted visitors. I used the isolation to make improvements to the ranch and to think about my future. Alina noticed my restlessness. "You are thinking about the senorita," she said one evening as we sat by the fire. "I worry about her. She is safe, Senor Jake. But that is not what troubles you." "What do you mean?" "You are lonely, more lonely than you were before she came here." Alina was right, as usual. Maria's presence had awakened something in me that I had thought was dead. The desire for family, for connection, for someone to care about beyond myself. "I'm too old to start over, Alina." "Nonsense. You are 45, not 95. You have many good years ahead of you." "Even if that's true, what kind of life could I offer someone? I'm a simple rancher living in the middle of nowhere." He offered safety and love to a frightened girl, and look how she flourished. The right woman would see the good man you are. Spring brought Dr. Hayes with another letter from his sister, and this time, he also carried a message specifically for me. "She wrote this herself," he said, handing me a sealed envelope. "My sister says she's been working on it for weeks." I opened the letter with trembling hands. "Dear Jake, I hope this letter finds you well, and that the ranch is thriving. I think of you often and wonder how you're spending your days. Are you taking proper care of yourself? Is Elena making sure you eat enough vegetables? I wanted you to know that I'm doing well here in California. The Henderson family has become like family to me, and I love working with their daughters. Teaching gives me such joy. I never realized how much I would enjoy helping young minds grow and learn. I've also been studying business and accounting through correspondence courses. Mr. Henderson has been teaching me about ranch management, and I've been able to help them improve their operations. Who would have thought that a girl who once knew nothing about the real world would discover she has a head for business? But Jake, the most important thing I want to tell you is how grateful I am for everything you did for me. You didn't just save my life that day in the desert. You gave me the chance to discover who I really am. You showed me that I was worth saving, worth protecting, worth believing in. I know I can never repay you for that gift, but I want you to know that I'm using it well. Every day, I try to be the kind of person who deserves the sacrifice you made. For me, Dad, I also want you to know that you shouldn't spend your life alone. You have so much love to give, and you deserve to have someone who appreciates the wonderful man you are. Don't let fear keep you from finding happiness. I will always think of you as the father I chose for myself, and I hope that someday, when it's safe, I can see you again. With all my love and gratitude, Mary, but always Maria to you." I had to stop reading several times to compose myself. The letter was everything I had hoped for, and more proof that Maria was not just surviving, but thriving, and that our time together had meant as much to her as it had to me. "She sounds happy," Dr. Hayes observed. "She does, and successful. I'm proud of her. She's right about one thing though. You shouldn't spend your life alone. Elena's been telling me the same thing. Maybe you should listen to the women in your life." That summer, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I hired a foreman to help run the ranch and began making trips to town more frequently. I started attending church again, participating in community events, and generally rejoining the world I had withdrawn from after my wife's death. It was at a church social that I met Sarah Beth Williams, a widow with 2 young children who had recently moved to the area. She was kind, intelligent, and had a strength that reminded me of Maria. We began a courtship that was careful and respectful, both of us having experienced loss and being cautious about opening our hearts again. A year later, Dr. Hayes brought news that Samuel Garrett had finally given up his search for Maria. He had remarried a young woman from a wealthy family who brought him the social status and financial connections he craved. "He's moved on," Dr. Hayes reported. "My sources say he's convinced himself that Maria died somewhere in the wilderness, and that's why she was never found." Good. Maybe now she can truly be free. There's something else. My sister says Maria has been accepted to a teacher's college in San Francisco. She's going to get her formal certification and then plans to open a school for girls in Sacramento. Her own school. She always said that was her dream. She's also been corresponding with a young man, a lawyer, who's been helping the Hendersons with some legal matters. My sister thinks it might be serious. I felt a momentary pang of something. That might have been jealousy, but it was quickly replaced by genuine happiness for Maria. She deserved love and companionship, and if she had found someone worthy of her, then I was glad. 2 years after Maria left for California, I married Sarah Beth in a simple ceremony at the local church. Alina cried tears of joy, and even some of my old bachelor friends admitted that marriage seemed to suit me. Sarah Beth brought her children, a boy of 8 and a girl of 10, into my life. And suddenly my quiet ranch was filled with the sounds of family. It was different from the peaceful contentment I had shared with Maria, but it was good in its own way. On my 50th birthday, Dr. Hayes arrived with a package that had traveled all the way from California. Inside was a beautiful hand-carved wooden box, and nestled within it was a letter and a photograph. The photograph showed Maria, now calling herself Mary Hayes, professionally standing in front of a small schoolhouse with a sign that read Sacramento Academy for Young Ladies. She looked confident and happy, every inch the successful educator she had dreamed of becoming. The letter was brief but heartfelt. "Dear Jake, I wanted you to see what your kindness helped create. The school is small but growing, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished here. I'm also happy to tell you that I'm engaged to be married to a wonderful man named David Chen, who shares my passion for education and social justice. I hope you found happiness too. You deserve all the joy life can offer. Thank you for teaching me that sometimes the greatest courage is simply refusing to give up on someone. With eternal gratitude and love, Mary Maria." I showed the photograph to Sarah Beth and told her the story of how Maria had come into my life and changed it forever. "You saved her," Sarah Beth said simply. "We saved each other," I replied. That evening, as I sat on my porch watching my stepchildren play in the yard while Sarah Beth prepared dinner, I reflected on the strange turns life can take. A chance encounter in the desert had led to a friendship that had transformed both our lives. Maria had found her strength and her purpose, and in helping her discover those things, I had rediscovered my own capacity for love and family. The frightened girl in the torn wedding dress had become a successful educator and advocate for young women. The lonely widower had become a husband and father again. And somewhere in California, a small school was changing the lives of girls who might otherwise never have had the chance to learn and grow. Sometimes the greatest rescues are the ones where both people end up saving each other. As the sun set over the Texas landscape, I said a silent prayer of gratitude for the day I had chosen to ride fence line on the eastern border of my ranch. That decision had led to everything good that had followed. Maria was right. Sometimes the greatest courage is simply refusing to give up on someone. But I had learned something else too. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the freedom to become who they're meant to be. And sometimes, in the process of giving that gift, you discover who you're meant to be as well. The end.